So when you watch good West Coast swing dancers, they look so natural. They seem to effortlessly dance with different partners. They have cool moves and slick styling, and they seem connected to the music in a way that almost seems magical. And maybe you think you'll never get there. Maybe you struggle with not feeling confident in yourself, or you've even contemplated quitting, or maybe just resigning yourself to you're not going to be that good.
We understand. We've all been there. Even the really good dancers have struggled with these things.
Hey, my name is Brian B.
I'm Miss Megan.
We're from Louisville, Kentucky. We've been teaching West Coast Swing at our studio here for over 17 years. Plus, we've been able to travel around the world, even to different countries. And yes, West Coast Swing is tricky, but I think with the tips that we're going to share with you in this video, you're going to be well on your way to becoming the dancer that you want to be. So let's get started with the 7 reasons that people succeed at West Coast Swing. At least our 7 reasons. All right, so reason number 1 that people become successful at West Coast Swing, or anything really, is having the right mindset. So you have to have a growth mindset and understand that we're all on a journey. And Megan and I talk about this quite a bit in our travels and with our students here. And what are some of the core key concepts to the students that we have that are the most successful?
Our most successful students have a realistic expectation of how long this journey is actually going to take.
And so that's good. And in this video, we're going to break down tips and tricks and give you a realistic path. Because if you can have the mindset that if you can get just one little thing out of every class, one little thing out of every video, those will stack. And in time, you're going to see a lot of growth. But we see people that have the wrong mindset, even though they put in some of the work, it always is a struggle. And then people who have the right mindset are just checking the box and storming towards becoming better West Coast Swing dancers. So that being said, let's get into tip number 2. All right, the second reason that people get really good at West Coast Swing is that they know this move, and they know this move. And you might be thinking, I don't know that move. But what you do know are the 3 core patterns of West Coast Swing. That's a push, a pass, and a whip. So that's the second thing we need to focus on, is I want you to understand that all the moves that you do and that all of us do are based on 3 basic moves. And I'm going to show you what I mean. But the 3 basic moves, some sort of a push, sugar push, push break, whatever you want to call it, some sort of a pass, right side pass, left side pass, it's just a pass, and then some sort of a whip. So the pattern we just did was no more than a whip with a single outside turn. That'd be the next branch of the tree. Then we did a whip with 2 hands, single outside turn, but we added a duck, right? Then we added a rock and go and a free spin, still a whip, single outside turn, we layered on a duck, we pulled her out with a rock and go, and then we danced a free spin, which is nothing more than a side pass. So that's number 2. I want you to remember that no matter what patterns you learn, it's based off a push, pass, and a whip. You learn those in the first couple of weeks of beginner class. So how do we communicate these patterns? We're going to get that into tip number 3. All right, the third thing you can focus on to become a great West Coast Swing dancer is understanding the 2 basic connections, a towards connection and an away connection. All right, so to communicate these different patterns, we have to master our connections. And in West Coast Swing, there's 2 basic ones. We argue that there's 3, but let's just cover 2 basic ones. There's some sort of an away connection and some sort of a towards connection. Depending upon your teacher, some people might call this leverage. I think the technical term is tension, but we don't like to use tension, so we use away and towards connection. So we need to master those. So in its most fundamental sense, if we're in our anchor position, we need to be upright with our hips underneath our body so we're not leaning back with our shoulders or our hips too much. And we need to be able to connect away and then towards. And Megan's got 2 different drills, or actually 3 different drills that we're going to put in here that you can use with your partner or even a wall. We can do some of these with a wall. So, Ms. Megan?
All right, so the first one, we're going to get connected and we're going to walk and stay connected. You can do it with 1 hand or you can do it with 2 hands. So Brian's going to walk backward, and by rolling through my feet, I'm going to stay connected away this whole time. Then you can switch and go connected towards your partner. Brian's going to come forward and I'm going to stay connected towards him this whole time.
So that's a good way. We're going to talk a little bit later about footwork that are going to segue into some styling things and rolling through your feet. So as we get to tip number 7, we're going to show you how this all comes together. So stay with us. The second thing we need to do if we're talking about styling and moving our body and the freedom that West Coast Swing allows is we need to be able to isolate our own body from our connection, right? In this one, it was very much what I'm doing, Megan's measuring and following. We need to cultivate that ability. The second thing we need to do as we get better is cultivate the ability to be free in our body while still maintaining the connection. So there's a way we do this. We're going to leave our wrists still, this still, and we're going to leave a connection that's still away. So Megan's going to feel the same connection, and I'm just going to move my body in, and I'm going to move my body away, right? This could be me as I'm styling. You can move to the side or to the side, but you notice it doesn't affect Megan. Then Megan's going to do the same thing. She's going to move.
Come in. I can move around as long as I don't mess with that connection.
So if we don't have that connection and we start to layer on some styling and I start to do some anchor styling, I'm taking my partner with me. Now I might want to be able to do that, but I want to do it on purpose.
Brian, what's tip number 4?
Tip number 4, Miss Megan, is mastering your walks and triples. Now you might think, I'm already dancing West Coast Swing, I can already do walks and triples. Yes and no, let me explain. So we're gonna walk back here. We're gonna have to master our walks and triples because we're gonna give you a couple of drills that are gonna allow you to improve your styling and improve your improvisation skills, your connection, a lot of stuff by focusing on it. So when we talk about our walks, we're literally thinking about walking in place 1, 2, 3, 4. We're talking about our triple steps. Same thing. We're going to rock back 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So walks and triples. But what can we focus on that will improve our dancing and allow us to become really good? We can focus on, I'm going to do this sideways to you, rolling through your feet. So instead of dancing like Frankenstein, just plodding along, which, hey, we're stoked when our beginner students can just plod along on time. Funny story, we run a dance competition called Derby City Swing. We have something called the Mom's Choice Award. So that is literally my mom picks 4 people, 2 guys, 2 girls, out of the prelims of the Jack and Jills and gives them an award. Well, I give it to them, but she chooses who it is. On nothing else than she likes them. And I remember there's this guy that won, cool dude with dreadlocks, just starting West Coast Swing, and he plotted his basics like this. And he smiled. And he was so on time, clearly on time, and he was just having a ball. And he was one of those guys that you loved to watch dance, even though he wasn't really good and was dancing Frankenstein footwork. But we don't want you to have Frankenstein footwork. We do want you to come to Derby City Swing. Maybe you'll win Mom's Choice Award. So what I want to do is I want to roll through my feet, step on the ball of my foot and roll through. Step on the ball of the foot and roll through. This is going to later allow us to add styling to our dancing, but we're going to practice it right here with walks. We're going to roll, 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 roll. Second thing, we said walks and triples. We're going to do the same thing with triple steps where we roll, roll, step or triple again, a 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Now there's 2 ways that we can start to integrate this into what we know. Number 1, we can go back to our drill, and as I step back as the leader, instead of just stepping back and you see the disconnect, I'm going to roll my foot and roll my foot. So you can see how these drills start to come together. Now when I go forward, I'm going to roll heel to toe. It's not the only way, but it's the easiest way if I'm moving forward. Does that make sense? Second thing I want you to do is practice your walks and triples in your basics. And we should have covered this in tip number 1, but I told you it's going to take all of these put together. I want you to dance your push, pass, and whip without touching by yourself, because now I don't have to worry about my connection. I can just worry about my footwork and specifically what's going on. If I do a right side pass, I can worry about the specifics of rolling my feet through my pattern. Same thing for the whip. I can be very specific about rolling my footwork through my pattern. So you should be able to do that, your push, pass, and your whip by yourself to music. It's a drill I use with my students all the time. They hate it. Anytime they start to get a little funny in their connections, we make them dance. I'll be dancing in a dance, and I'll feel them pulling and stuff, and I'll just go, and they just know we're going to dance a couple push, passes, and whips, puts us back on our feet, gets us connected to music. Now, when we get to step number 5, we're going to talk about how we're going to break the rules a little bit and why sometimes musicians get confused with 6 and 8 count music and how West Coast Swing gets integrated together. Now, if you don't know Miss Megan, she's not going to like this one. Megan, are you ready to break the rules?
Nope.
Megan is a rule follower. I am a spirit of the law guy. And that leads us to tip number 5, which is we have to think of West Coast Swing in 2-beat increments. That's going to be helpful from a lot of different aspects. It's going to be helpful for people trying to remember their patterns. It's also going to be vital for people who want to add styling. So what do we mean by 2-beat increments? When we go back to our walks and triples drills, I want you to think and count it in 2 beats. So we're going to do 8 beats of walks, 8 beats of triples, but I'm going to count them as 1, 2, 1, 2. I'll show you what I mean. Walks. So if I walk, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But sometimes that doesn't match the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the music. I'm going to get to that in the next section. So I'm going to count it in 2-beat increments. We're going to count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That is the pulse, what I call the critical timing of West Coast swing, and I'll explain that in a pattern. But let's look at our triples, counting it 1 and 2. If we do our triples, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, you'll see that every 2 beats is a whole beat of music. If I counted my push, pass, and my whip in 2-beat increments, 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2. Now that can be helpful. It's not vital in the beginning, but it can be very helpful because the music and the patterns aren't going to match. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of a whip doesn't necessarily match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the music. If you're lost, I'm going to explain that in tip number 6. But this is where we get into styling. If we go back to our drill, right? If I have a triple step, 1 and 2, once I know that there's a triple step in the pattern, Megan's going to triple, and I'm going to go 1 and 2. I'm going to get there because I understand the 2-beat increment. I don't have to get there the same way, right? I have to be on this foot by 2, but if Megan does the triple step again, I could go 1 and 2 again, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. I could triple or not. So we understand the rules. If we put that into a pattern, and Megan's going to do her little styling for the sugar push, 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So she doesn't have to triple. She has to follow the rules of the push, get to me on count 2. She has to respect 1 and get to that foot on 2. And then she could do whatever 1 and 2. So you want to think about it in 2-beat increments. That's how you get this stuff in a whip for the leader. 1, 2, 1 and 2. If you could see, if I do it from the other side, instead of doing the triple, 1, 2, 1 and 2, I need to be here for the whip on this side. That's the rule of the game. However, I could choose to sweep. 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2. I need to be on the right foot. No one said I had to triple. In beginner class, it's vital, but once you understand those rules, you want to think about West Coast swing in 2-beat increments. Keeps the critical timing or critical beats of the dance in place, keeps the rules of the dance in place, and then we're going to get to tip number 6, which is how do we integrate this with musicality so you can look awesome on the dance floor. 1, ha, 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 ha. 2, ha, ha, ha. 3, ha, ha, ha. We have to be able to count to 8. Can you count to 8? Probably. Can you count to 8 while doing 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 count patterns? That's the trick. So this is tip number 6, which is we need to learn to count straight 8s. So just like Count Dracula we were talking about off camera, we need to be able to count straight 8. So what do we mean by that? Well, when we learn a push, pass, and a whip, we count it like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 and 6, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 and 6, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But what we need to do when we count straight 8s is we need to count the music, not the pattern. That's how we're going to start to connect to the music. When we began dancing, we counted the patterns. At some point, you probably got to the point where you didn't have to count the patterns. Well, now we're ready for the next level, is to count the music until it's integrated in you and you don't have to count the music in your musical, and we'll hire you to do some videos for us. All right, so here's how we practice this. We're going to do a push, pass, and a whip, but we're going to count straight 8. It's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you're in one of two places at this point. You're possibly still counting patterns and trying to stay on time. You can ignore this section, go on to the next section. But if you're to the point where you can dance your patterns, you don't really count them, you know how to lead them, follow them, all that's pretty good, you need to start to dance your patterns and count the music, because then you're going to start to uncover the accents in the music. Now, how do you integrate your patterns? That's beyond the scope of this video. We did a whole course called The Ultimate Guide to Musicality, where we talk you through staying on time to the music, focusing on the critical beats, counting straight eights, dealing with phrasing, and then how to integrate your patterns to accent the music. But what I want you to do is dance your push, pass, and a whip, counting straight eights, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 1, and 2, until it starts to go away and you start to find accents in the music. Cool? But none of that's gonna work unless we learn to integrate it, and that's what we're gonna talk about in step number 7. All right, tip number 7, before we disclose what it is, how many levels of learning are there in my estimation?
There are 4.
4 levels of learning: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and understanding your beginner stuff on a higher level. So that's what we're gonna do. In putting it together, we're gonna learn how to comb through the first 6 steps in this and put it all together. But first things first, you have to have the right
mindset.
You have to have the right mindset to know that at the highest level, we're able to just earn one little thing that makes our dancing better, and it stacks on top of each other, and that we're all on a journey, and that there is no ultimate destination. So that being said, how do we integrate this? Well, we know that the first thing is the mindset. Number 2 is that we have a push, pass, and a whip, and everything's based off of it. So we're gonna use that as our workspace as we walk into the next thing. So I'm gonna use my push, pass, and whip, and I can think about my walks and triples, being on time to my walks and triples. Then I can think about advancing that and rolling through my feet as I dance my walks and triples, right? I can think about rolling through my feet. I can think about the connection points to my partner in those walks and triples, right? And improve that both away and towards. I can start to play with some of the connections and leave my footwork alone, or leave my connection point alone, and you can level up the connection from there. Then we talked about 2-beat increments, which is kind of what we did there, where I understand that yes, I have a 2-beat increment to get to the other side of the slot, but no one says I have to triple. Your beginner class teacher says you have to triple, and we teach our beginner classes right over there. You have to triple, but once you know the rules, you can start to bend them a little bit, and that's what the high-level pros do at a super high level, is they respect the rules, but they bend the timing that it almost looks to you guys and to us sometimes that they're not following the rules, but I promise they are. They're just stretching them to the max. So the other thing that we have to do is now understand that West Coast swing music keeps rolling in straight eights, and we need to be able to count this in straight eights: 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 1, and 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that will allow us to find some musicality in that. Now, all that being said, this is one of my favorite videos we've ever done for the YouTube channel, but there's something we have done that's cooler than that. It is our website, West Coast Swing Online. We also have non-West Coast Swing related videos, 2-step and all that stuff, but what I love about it is everything is sectioned off. So the patterns are broken down by the beginner patterns, beginner, intermediate. So this is anything from the beginner patterns, that's what you need to master first. Once you've mastered those, you can go to the beginner, intermediate, advanced. Then we have pro level moves that are really stretching the rules. If you're working on your musicality, styling, spins and turns, connection, you can pop in what you're looking for and get a bite-sized video just on that topic. It's called our Full Access Membership. It's the coolest thing we've ever done. 14-day free trial. You can get it right down here. It's free for 14 days and is literally the coolest thing that we've ever created to help you level up your West Coast swing and become the dancer that you've always wanted to be.